Good afternoon and welcome to today's program titled The Business of Intervention, What It Takes to Be Successful. I'm Shannon Bryce, Associate Editor of Addiction Professional Magazine. Today's program is a Foundations Recovery Network webinar sponsored by Millennium Laboratories. Thank you to our sponsor and to you and our audience for giving us your time and attention. Before we get started, I'd like to share a few housekeeping details. Each window on your screen can be moved by clicking and dragging, or enlarged and minimized by clicking the icons in the top right corner of each window. Please use the Q&A area to the right of the slides to submit a question at any time. If you cannot see this area, simply click the red Q&A button. To download a copy of today's slides, please click the link in the Resources area in the upper right of your screen. If you have any technical issues during the program, please click the yellow Help button to troubleshoot the issue. Our CE process has recently changed. To receive credit for today's program, you must click the green CE certificate widget at the conclusion of the program and complete the evaluation form. If you are watching today's program in a group, please download the group submission guide and program evaluation form located in today's resources list and follow the instructions there. At this time, it is my pleasure to introduce our speaker, Dr. Louise A. Stanger. Louise received her bachelor's degree in English literature from the University of Pittsburgh, her master's in social work from San Diego State College, and her doctorate in educational leadership from the University of San Diego. Dr. Stanger has over 30 years of experience as a college professor, researcher, and licensed clinician, working with families and individuals who experience substance abuse and mental health disorders. She serves as the director of All About Interventions and as the president of the Sidney D. Holland Foundation. She has been performing collaborative interventions with families since 1980. She continues to explore the efficacy of treatment strategies such as motivational interviewing, cognitive behavioral, solution-focused coaching, family systems, and 12-step facilitation. Thank you, Louise, for taking the time to speak with us today. And with that, the audience is yours.
Oh, thank you. And I want to say first, thank you, Shannon. Thank you, Millennium Labs and Foundations, for the opportunity to do my first webinar. I wanted all of you in the audience to know that I believe that in the business of interventions, that you must dress for success. So I have absolutely no idea what you are all doing out there, but I can tell you that I am dressed for your success. And I hope that our time together today will be exciting, invigorating, and energizing for you. One of the first things I'd like to do is I'm going to imagine that I got to know you and think about what brought you here today. I always think that when I start out any presentation or any engagement, or I'm off to do a class, my hope is that in a perfect world, I will get 3 things out of that experience. I also think it's really important for you to set your intention for today. So if you can just take a moment and think about what brought you to this webinar today. What is it that you hope to get out of it? And if I haven't answered your questions during the webinar time, please make sure that you have an opportunity to ask your questions, because after all, this is a collaborative experience, and this webinar, How to Be a Successful Interventionist and What is About the Business of Intervention, is for you. With that in mind, I'd like to introduce you to something I think is really important as we set the stage for who we are and what we want to do in our career life and in our personal life. What you have in front of you is called The Wheel of Life, and you can find it in a book that says, what will you be doing the next 5 years? And what it asks for each one of you is to take a look at different spheres in your life, and whether it be family, career, health, financial, education, etc. And on a scale of 1 to 10, take a look and do a hard look, and maybe you'll do this after the presentation when you have some quiet time, and take a look where you are not satisfied with your life and where you are tremendously, completely satisfied with your life. So are you satisfied with what you're doing in terms of recreation, or are you working so hard that you don't have a time to go climb a mountain, to sing a song, to take a bubble bath, to ride a bicycle? How are your relationships? How is your connection to your spirit, to your values? Where are you feeling really terrific? I guess today we are really focusing on your career. And how satisfied are you with your career? Are you thinking about becoming an interventionist? Or have you been a seasoned interventionist? Or is this something that you want to add to the repertoire of your behavior? Well, one of the things that I learned a long time ago is one always learns from others. And today I'd like to share with you something that a gentleman by the name of Joel Garfinkel, who's out of San Francisco, talked about. And he talked about having a dream job. And what I love so much about Joel, and I'll share a little personal fact with you, is it's no secret that I was a professor for over 26, 27 years at San Diego State University. Well, the gift that a professor has is when their students far outseed themselves. And Joel Garfinkel was once my student. He has since gone on to become a top-notch executive coach and dream job coach. And one of the things I asked you today is you're taking a look at, do I want to be an interventionist? Why am I an interventionist? What is my dream job? And I think that in today's day and age, we do have to take a look at why we're choosing the career trajectory we are choosing. What makes that so special for us? Well, when we think about a dream job, it does allow you to be true to yourself. It matches you, and that's pretty exciting. It fits into your life. Maybe you like flexibility of schedule. Maybe you are able to leave and come and go as you want. It incorporates your values. You feel that what you're doing is consistent with your values. You feel that how you perform as an interventionist matches how you value human life and dignity. Also, perhaps your dream job taps into your own gifts. We all have different gifts. Some of us might be writers, some of us might be painters, some of us may be administrators, some of us may be great in staff development, some of us may be good in shifting the conversation. And if you are an interventionist, you have to be able to shift the conversation from one of pain and sorrow to health and wellness. And how does your dream job give you energy instead of draining you? How do you, when you take a look at what you are doing today, how energetic do you feel? What gives you that sense of source? What do you do each morning to help make your day a great day and make your job a good job, given the vicissitudes of work? So I'm going to ask you a moment to take a break and take a brief, kind of fun self-employment test that really has to do a lot with, do you want to be what we call an interventionist? Do you like working by yourself? Please check yes or no. Oh my gosh, 74.8% of you that answered that question said yes. And so one of the things that tells me is you like autonomy. You're able to work alone. That means that you're able to give yourself your own strokes. You're able to be self-starters and take direction. 25% of you said, you know what, no, I don't like working alone. And I would bet that some of you that even said yes said sometimes it gets a little lonely working by yourself. Sometimes I might need feedback. Those are important things for you to take a look at as you decide whether or not private practice, whether or not being an interventionist is a career for you. In like manner, do you like being in charge? Do you want to be the boss? Take your time and give your instincts a roll and say yes or no. Well, we really have a lot of bosses in this room. That is so exciting. Everybody wants to be a chief, and because 83.2% of you said you like being your own boss, and 16.8% of you said no. Well, one thing I can tell you, if for those of you that have been involved in interventions, and there are many different models and many different kinds, and I'm not here today to talk about that, there is one thing that they all have in common, that the person who is the interventionist or the team member who works together, if you work as a team, you are in charge of the facilitation of that discussion. You are in charge of honoring that family, that accountability team, of keeping it respectful, compassionate, and on task and solution focused for the common good of that group. For those of you that don't like being your own boss, it may mean that private practice may not be a good way for you because you don't want to be the one who has to generate the income and pay the bill, but that doesn't mean that you wouldn't be good at facilitation. And lastly, do you like drama and high intensity? Do you like being in the middle of the thick of things? Yes or no? Well, 46.9% of you said you do like drama and high intensity. And this is where we switched. 53.1% of you said no. I don't like drama and I don't like high intensity. I would ask you, if you don't like drama and you don't like high intensity, then perhaps intervention may not be a career trajectory for you, because when you are in the midst of an intervention, there is drama. You must be 150% focused on that family, on that accountability group. You also have to understand the high intensity, and we'll get into it, of taking that first call, unless you work for a large company and they have a call center. You are in the midst of someone else's family pain and drama. So for those of you that, and I really love the honesty of the group and the transparency of this group this morning, take a look at this, because the business of intervention and doing interventions, in my opinion, it does contain drama and high intensity of thought, feeling, and action and focus. So what are some of the other reasons that you must have your dream job? Having a dream job allows you to align with your passion and do what you love. I don't know if you've ever read the book by Sumner Redstone. It's called The Passion to Win. Sumner, if you don't know who that is, he's chairman of the board of Viacom and Paramount Pictures. And he has been one of the most successful businessmen in the country. And he writes about, you must have a passion to win. You must do what you love, but you must also be able to make tough decisions. And I think in any business or private business, you must do that. it'll help you make a difference in something you believe. I am sure with all my heart that every one of you that has phoned in today believes they want to make a difference in the areas of substance abuse and mental health disorders. You would not want to help those people in pain and be in this profession if you didn't. And so when we look at it on the micro level, we're helping change people's lives, maybe on a meso level with families, but on a macro level, we're trying to help change society's life by making the acceptance of substance abuse and mental health disorders acceptable, but also in helping people live lives more healthily by getting them the treatment that they need. The other thing is you have to think that this stuff is enjoyable and doesn't seem like work. The moment it becomes really something tedious, you have to take a look and look the other way. I remember many years ago starting out as a hospital social worker, and I worked on a ward that all the patients suddenly came down with Guillain-Barré, which was a disease of ascending paralysis. And what I realized was I wasn't effective, or the nurses weren't effective, or people weren't effective, when suddenly we were numb to the fact that this was someone who might have been riding a bicycle one day and suddenly paralyzed the next, and there was no clear-cut reason why, when they would get better. And that's when it became a thing that I said, well, you know what, maybe you're burned out. So what you have to take a look at is how fast can you go? Is in the long run this is more enjoyable? And do I still see people? Am I still starting where that client is? Also, you need to follow your wants instead of your shoulds. All of us grew up with sort of shoulds. My should was my initial spelled law, and I was supposed to become a lawyer. Instead, I became a social worker. And so I followed my wants. I followed what fit me better. Funny today that I collaborate with a wonderful lawyer as one of my teammates and partners. But for me, my want was to be a social worker. And the 10th thing is, does it fulfill you? At the end of the day, win, lose, or draw, are you really happy with what you're doing? And you feel good and proud to say, hey, I'm an interventionist. This is what I do for a living. And I'm so proud to be amongst a group of colleagues that I call my fellow interventionists. So I just wanted to share with you a wonderful picture. I don't know how many of you are younger or how many are older, but there was once a wonderful movie, and I suggest you all get it and rent it. It was called How to Succeed in Business Without Really Trying. But one of the main things, and that was the character Robert Morse, he said, believe in yourself. And what I want to tell you all today is I believe in you. But more important than I believing in you or the person that's trained you about intervention is that you'll need to believe in yourself. So, what do you know about self-employment? What is your business IQ? What experiences have you had being self-employed? I'd love the fact that when we talk later that you might be able to share those. Because being self-employed means you get to be your own boss. But are you a good boss or a bad boss to yourself? Do you ever give yourself any time off? Or do you just have lots and lots of hours? Well, you know what? If I'm my own boss, I get to control what I earn. Well, income in, out go. But in order to earn more money, people in this business, people need to know about you, and people need to call you up. There's also greater flexibility. This morning, I'm sitting in front of a screen having the gift of being able to talk with you. Earlier this morning, I got myself together for this because for me, exercise is important by going to a place called Soul Cycle. So I had the flexibility of doing that. Later on today, I'm totally tied up with talking with a family that we're trying to move towards health and wellness. So how do you gauge your day? What is it in your day? Do you like to be a consultant? Do you have the ability to do that? But most of all, when we talk about becoming an interventionist and starting a practice, I always ask you, do you want to be a seasonal employee? You know, sort of like the kind of person that somehow or other, if you were a kid, do you ever remember having seasonal employment where you got to work in the department store during the holidays, or you came home from college and you had a part-time job, or you work part-time in an agency? Because in truth, even with big call centers, no one really ever knows where the next intervention is coming from unless they happen to be working in a particular agency. So what does that tell you? It tells you that your income is not guaranteed. It's irregular. It can be good some months, and some months it can't be good. I don't know how many of you have talked to interventionists or in your own intervention practice have said, gee, I feel good if I have X number of interventions per month. And what is it that I need to try and manifest? And how am I going to do that through marketing and everything? But before we jump to that, you do have more control over your time. You get to set your own hours. And in today's day and age with the advent of the computer, and you're talking to someone who actually wrote their dissertation on a legal notebook pad and has really metamorphosed over into social media and using the computer and teaching from the computer, sometimes our iPhones, our BlackBerries, our computers don't allow us to, we don't detach from them. We actually are addicted to them. But in truth, when you're in private practice, you can set your own hours because you're your boss. You're responsible to you and to whatever staff you might have. You have independence. You have potential for success and for money. What you should have if you're starting your own practice is you really need seed money. Do not be foolish and not have seed money. At least have 6 months of savings that you can live on. And you need to have that savings sort of secured because there is the volatility of the marketplace. There is, time was, and this is my understanding from many people that have been in the field a long time, that it used to be that in the beginning, interventionists were hired by treatment centers, and the phones were sort of ringing off the hooks. Today, with Affordable Care Act, with managed care, there aren't as many calls coming in for interventions. And we also have very, very skilled, I hope some of you out there are admissions people, because admissions people are brilliant. They they don't usually send you an intervention unless they can't close it themselves. So there is volatility of the market. There are long hours. There is sometimes stress and loneliness. You say, am I the only person out there? Where do I need to talk? And later on we'll talk about the importance of joining organizations. But understand that you not only are the boss, you're not only the person doing the intervention if you work by yourself, but you're also the bookkeeper, you're also the closer, and you're also the more or less the scheduler in the very beginning. So I wanted to show you a clip, but because of the webinar form, I can't really do that. But I do want to tell you that I'm going to ask you if this is what you want to do. All of you are very familiar with Breaking Bad for the most part. And this scene actually represents a scene from Breaking Bad. Here is, people usually call us as interventionists after they've had a failed attempt. And in this attempt, a father has gone in and was going to talk to his daughter, who previously had some sobriety, some treatment. And when he goes in, she is now living in an apartment that he owns. He finds her with a boyfriend having done heroin. And And after he finds her having done heroin, there's this very violent scene, which is very, very realistic, where the boyfriend jumps out of bed, he takes a baseball bat, he says, "You're no good, you're no good." Father gets very angry and says, "You know what, I'm just going to call the police." And he tries to call the police, and daughter says, "No, you don't understand. I just had a little slip back. I'll go to rehab tomorrow. I don't need to go today. After all, I have to take care of work." And then you forget that the last time I went to rehab, my plants all died. And Dad, because he loves her so much, puts the phone down and says, "Okay." And those are the kinds of cases we may get. We may get the father who puts his 27-year-old daughter up at a high-end hotel with her boyfriend so she can order Ben & Jerry ice cream after doing heroin and meth. You have to understand that you are wanting to go into places and meet people in places where you may never have traveled. I started out as a social worker working for Allegheny County Department of Public Welfare in the time that Martin Luther King was alive and he was killed. So the only thing I ever learned was meeting people in their homes and going to those places. So for me, I always meet someone where they are, where they live, in their natural terrain. But I will tell you, you have to be very careful and really do excellent safety checks when you decide to do this. And look long and hard. So for those of you that are considering it, perhaps someone will let you shepherd them as you go out and ask someone to allow you to be sort of a fly on the wall as they do an intervention, so you can get the experience of where you might go, where you might travel, and what you might see. So now that you know this is going to be your dream job, I urge each and one of you to go get training, but also more than that, mentoring and supervision. I know I have the privilege of mentoring some people across the country, but just doing a training is not enough. You need someone to coach you. You need someone to talk to. So if you can get that, please go ahead and do it. If you work for a large group, that's obviously part and parcel of the wonderful things they offer you. When you think about it, there are certifications and licenses that you will need. Obviously, if you're going to start your own business, you need a business license. You need a name, and you want to go take that out from the small business. So each one of you in whatever state you're in, you want to do that. The other thing is you want to be able to have, in the world of intervention, there is a certification that's now given by the state of Pennsylvania, which is Certified Intervention Professional. You also want to think about what groups you want to belong to. But on a business level, you need to get a fictitious business name perhaps. I picked out a long time ago All About Interventions. I don't know, it said AAI. It sort of came to me one night. People have wonderful names for their companies. Think about it. Make it personal. Make it something that really reflects you, because that business name will become you and your branding. The other thing I want you to do is do some strategic planning. Take a plan. You know, a lot of times we go to a course and we say, you know what, this is what I want to do when I grow up. And we find out that that may not be the right place for us. But we might have had to try and experience that and learn that that might not have been the right place. For myself personally, I was always a really great grant writer. So I was able to write $1 million grants, and when you write a grant, all the people on the grant are a team member. They're not your staff because you're all collaborative. I once in my lifetime had an opportunity to be an administrator, and it wasn't too long before I realized that I'm not meant to be an administrator. I'm meant to be a collaborator. Very, very different set of skills. So take a look and strategically plan about your practice, because failing to plan is a plan to fail, and even the best laid plans are somewhat hard. So when you have a dream job, I know that many treatment centers do geomapping. So geomapping, and you might know that from some of the centers that you visited. Geomapping is where you take a big map and you put down, where did your clients come from, what part of the world, what part of marketing. But in terms of being an interventionist, whether we're in Ohio, whether we're in Pennsylvania, whether we're in Illinois, Missouri, Wyoming, Los Angeles, take a look at your area and geomap out at least the number of treatment centers that are within your radius. Geomap out the number of therapists or addiction medicine specialists that are in your area, because that's going to give you an idea of who you want to meet with and who you want to be able to collaborate with. Because unless you know people, it's going to be difficult to get referrals. And so geomapping gives you the world. It also lets you know that I guess I'm at the point where I really don't believe that there's tough competition for interventionists. There's so many people that have substance abuse and mental health disorders that there is enough work to go around for everybody. But it is good to understand who are the top in your community. Who do people respect? Who do they want to learn from? It's really important, and get to meet them and get to interview them and get to find out what makes them special. So you want to know what your area is like. I recently moved from San Diego to West Hollywood, and it was totally synergistic but totally different. Los Angeles has got a bastion of recovery, a bastion of treatment centers. I'm still learning about all the wonderful professionals that are in my area. Also, you need to set up banking and business accounts. You need debit cards. It's really great. The really exciting thing is when you get your own business and all of a sudden you have your own business account. You go, will there ever be any money in it? Oh my gosh. So the other thing is, how do you have people pay you? Do you have them pay you by credit card? If you do, you might want to try PayPal or those wonderful squares, which I still haven't been able to master, but you can get anywhere. You may have to give people your routing numbers. You want to make sure that you have access, or you know how you want people to pay, and that you have your own established business account with your own established business credit card, because that makes reporting that much easier. The other thing is real estate. Where is your dream job located? So I'm talking to you from my home office, which is my business office, which is very exciting. Now, if you have a home office, you do know that tax-wise, you can take that square footage and you can take it off of your taxes. But sometimes interventionists, I swear, our business office is in our car because we're constantly on the go, we're constantly on the move. Some people may have large call centers, and they're larger kinds of folks. Where is your office? Do you want, and some people have their own office because what they want is for someone to come and visit them. I truthfully have never had an office. I truthfully can use someone's office if I choose to meet them. Since I came out of an old school where I was always going to people's homes and that I felt that it was so rich, the data is so rich from meeting someone where they're most comfortable, that's what's most comfortable for me. That being stated, I always have to assess for safety to make sure that I'm going to meet someone in a safe place, and you really need to do that. And for those of you that don't know, I always work with a team member, so I'm not ever traveling by myself. I just don't think that's the way I choose to practice. You may choose differently. Who's your staff? Do you have a staff? It's so exciting to have a staff. And the bigger your staff is, the more sort of headaches. And are they on the payroll or are they independent contractors? Do you have someone who takes your phone calls, and how do you pay them? These are all kinds of things that you're going to have to work out. Do you pay them on percentage? Do you pay them hourly? Do you have associates that will work with you and you give away interventions to, or you team with them? How are you going to pay them? What is your ratio? What are you going to do for them? Also, are they virtual? Do you have virtual staff? Because many people team across the country. Do you actually talk to people virtually? Do you use Skype? Do you use the telephone? How do you communicate? And sometimes we have imaginary staff, right? Because we like people to think we're busy. So we say, oh, we have a recording, and someone will say, you know what, she's really busy, he's really busy, and we'll get right back to you. So these are kinds of things. So set out, where are you going to house your business? Where do you feel comfortable? Do you like getting dressed up every day and going to your office in your home, or do you like getting dressed up every day and going to your own office? And how do you do things? Do you use headphones? What kinds of electronic equipment do you use? So, and I kind of jumped the gun. So phones, answering services. One of the things I've learned being an interventionist, if you don't pick up that phone quickly, that person's going to disappear into the woodwork, and they have found someone else right away. I'll never forget one time it was 9:05 a.m., and I missed a phone call. And it may not have been the right, not all interventions are the right ones for you. And I called the person back by 9:20, and by 9:20 they said, you know what, I just talked with Y, and they're terrific, so thank you very much. So accessibility, I think, is really, really important when you are considering being an interventionist. Having either yourself pick up the phone right away or having someone else pick up that phone right away. And I'm sure those of you in admissions might agree with that. The other thing is, do you like to Skype? I think sometimes Skyping is really fabulous. I can Skype with some of the family coaching folks I work with. I can also use Skype inside of an intervention. That is, if someone's really important to that person and they're not able to come there, what happens if they're serving overseas in Afghanistan or another part of the world, and they can't be present, but they really are the one that you think will move that client? Make sure you know how to use Skype. Today, WebEx is another modality in which you can give information back and forth to families. And, of course, email. And with email, if you notice or you email me, you'll always notice that I have a HIPAA confidentiality on that. We do want to be careful with email because we don't want to transpose or put out in the air confidential information about people. The other thing is, what kind of data are you going to keep? What data do you want to track? As a business person, have you been tracking the number of calls you get per month versus the number of closes? What is your ratio between calls in and closes? Also, do you track your referral sources? How do you thank your referral sources? Oftentimes an interventionist might be faced with the problem of they get a phone call from one treatment center, but the person is not the right fit for that treatment center, and they want that treatment center to be happy. And so you have to call that treatment center and thank them for that, and then you have to ask them, is this the right fit or not? Or the client themselves, even though they came from one treatment center, wants to go to another. The other thing you want to do is think about the type of engagement you have. How long are you engaging with this person? I don't do any engagements that are less than 3-month engagements with the accountability team. That means post-intervention, because I believe in a systemic change. Some people will do 6 months, some people were. What are you offering? What are you doing? Make sure that your engagements are correct. Have an attorney look them over. If you have any questions, make sure you are taking care of them well. What are your scope of services? What do you do, and what do you say you do? Again, make sure that you are honoring what you do. If you're charging extra, say, for transport, then you need to put in that, or escort services. If you provide continuing care, make sure you spell out what that is. Make sure that in any engagement you have that you have a best effort clause, and that you specify the length of engagement. One of the things, if you're billing by invoice, I want to let you know that there's a great web program you can download off of your iPhone or iPad, and it's called Invoice to Go. It is so simple for billing, and it keeps track of who you billed, how you billed, and what it is, and it's really easy. Some other people will like QuickBooks, but have your accountant work with you to set up what your categories are. And so you're able to monitor what your expenditures are and how you're going to expend them. Also, travel and transport. As an interventionist, ready, set, go. You've got to be ready to go. So some of us might use websites like Priceline, Kayak, etc., Hertz, Budget. Some other people you have a travel agent. And if you're using a travel agent, you have to make sure that your client has a travel authorization form that you can give them with their credit card so they can do the booking. It's sometimes really much easier, although it could cost your client maybe a little bit more because you do still have to pay the travel agent for a travel agent, because they can change at the top of a hat the airline ticket. Sometimes the airline ticket can be no fault, meaning that there's no extra charge, and that takes away that particular headache from you. You may decide that you like a particular rent-a-car, Hertz, Budget, but having all that taken care of you by someone else allows you, if you're a single practitioner or a practitioner with just 1 or 2 other people, to have most of the time for you to spend with your clients and not to be worried about those kinds of details. Of course, when you're starting out, these are details that you must take care of. I wanted to, in the perfect world, show you another clip, and this is another clip, and this actually comes from the hit show Nashville. So all of our friends out in Tennessee, including Foundations Recovery, I'm not too sure that this was filmed in Nashville, but these are actually 2 people, and I'm just going to imagine for right now, instead of who I know they were from the show, but that's you and I going and walking in because we want to help someone. And I urge you to consider always working with a teammate. Perhaps this is not the lecture today or the talk today to talk about the values of working with someone else, but I think from a safety perspective and a clinical perspective, you cannot be working with another interventionist. If you're worried about making enough money, maybe you make a little bit less, but the synergy that comes and the ability it gives to your client or your family, because they may like one of you better than another, you may relate, and God forbid someone says, I'm going to kill myself or harm someone else, and I'm a mandated reporter, I'm stuck on the phone for 16 minutes. I know that the family's covered and that client's covered because I've got another person with me. And it also may be times that you may even need 3 people with you. And that is if you know that it's a fairly dangerous situation and you feel that you may need security or someone else who can really sit there and really help set a standard. I've had the privilege of working with a gentleman who has 33 years experience with both the LA Police Department and Santa Monica Police Department. And what I like about him and what he's taught me is patience, because he was used to interviewing people until they really said yes. And we know in interventions what we really are after is getting someone to say yes. But all of you, I want you to respect yourselves and make sure that clinically you are safe and that you're giving the best possible service to your clients. So wireless devices, how are you going to be connected? What are you going to do? All of you are probably much more geniuses about laptops, iPads, phones, earpieces, and other devices. I have to tell you that my learning has gone, 150% into the digital age. And I'm still not great with an earpiece, but I absolutely cannot live without all my media, all my devices. And the only thing I worry about is becoming addicted to all my wireless devices. So make sure that you have a bunch of them and how you're going to be connected and what makes you comfortable, and check them all out. Social media. I cannot say enough about social media. We live in an age where I don't even know if Twitter's out of date yet, and Pinterest and Facebook, but how are you going to connect with the world? How does the rest of the world know? I mean, 10 years ago a webinar would have been impossible, and today we're just blessed with a webinar. So make sure that your written materials, your business cards, your letterhead, your website, your mailings, your texting, they all need to match. And if you need someone to help you with branding, please go ahead and use someone. You can even find someone at the local college who's taking a marketing class or a graphics class. They love jobs because that's what will help meet their assignments, as well as also allow you to create. Creating websites. I work with a wonderful gentleman who has really taught me a lot. Also using, many people will use Constant Contact to communicate with their people. I happen to like MailChimp because I think the logo is just so funny, and for someone like me, it is just so simple to use. Never, never forget your colleagues and consultants. And in this picture, I guess because I'm a woman interventionist, are 3 other women interventionists, Pat Bashir, Tanya Frisbee, and Angela Pugh. But my other colleagues are Jeffrey Merrick, Sean Fertel. I have colleagues all over the country, and that's because I belong to both the Association of Intervention Specialists, and I'm membership chair of the Network of Independent Interventionists. Those are professional groups that I really value because it gives me an opportunity to meet and learn and grow from colleagues across the country. But our colleagues are also lawyers. You may have to consult with a lawyer, or a lawyer may try and consult with you. Accountants. How do I do books? I mean, I don't know when you went to school, but bookkeeping was not my first love. Business coaches. There are some wonderful business coaches out there. John O'Connor with The Guiding Shift, Linda Landon in California. There are Joel Garfinkel, who was my student. There's wonderful people. So don't be afraid. Look at their websites. Take some of their advice to work with someone if you're new in business. Rome wasn't built in a day, and neither were you. Some interventionists all have publicists, and that is if you want placement in television or media. There is some say that the more you're out there, like with a radio show or something, and the more you have constant contact, perhaps that high visibility will allow you to have some more clients. Mentors. Always, always look to a mentor, and your mentor may be just that person that you think you're mentoring. Mentors come in all shapes and sizes, and always, always value what you can learn from someone else. And that someone else may not have as much experience from you. So don't let your ego get a hold of you just because you've been doing it a while. Know that learning never ends, at least in my book. And professional colleagues. They're our lifeblood. Every time every one of you in this room who's listening on are an interventionist, you're going out and representing me. You're going out and representing everyone else. So as a group, we're representing to all the people in the United States and Europe that we're helping what an interventionist is, how we extend an invitation to change, how we support health and wellness. So when you think about the work you do, don't think of you being all by yourself. You're representing me. You're representing the person down the street, across the country. And so that's why together we want to have strong ethics. And then I'm just going to wrap up with some ethical considerations because I think they're really important. What are your fiduciary relationships with providers? Do you have a fiduciary relationship? I do not. I'm independent, so I have no relationship whatsoever. Do I get sometimes paid for trainings? Yes. Do you have a call center? Are you on pay-per-click? Do truth in advertising. Don't advertise something you can't get. Gifts and kickbacks. What do you think is right for a gift? What is a kickback? Be careful of internet marketing scams. Sometimes a treatment center, the way it's shown on a website is not the same. Sometimes a practitioner, the way they're displayed on the website may not be safe. You have an obligation, an ethical obligation, and take a look at the ethical guidelines. If you happen to be also a licensed professional in another field, take a look at those. But also take a look at the ethical guidelines for AIS and NII. Also, we have an ethical responsibility to colleagues, to clients, and to practice settings as professionals and to our professional affiliations, as well as to broader society. And that's what I mean, that every time I go out there, I represent you and you represent me. So please, please remember that. And some of the ethical considerations, one last little one. This was a clip from Flight with Denzel Washington. And then one of the ethical considerations we do is to what extent do we allow our clients to travel. To what extent is it safe for a client to travel when they're under the influence, and what extent is it not? But what are some of the ethical dilemmas that you raise? I hope you'll do that in a question and answer form. And honestly, I don't know if any of you have ever read Think and Grow Rich. If you haven't, I recommend it. It's by a wonderful gentleman by the name of Napoleon Hill. And what he said was, anything the mind can believe, it can conceive. Anything your mind can conceive in terms of your practice, whether it be large, small, whatever, you can achieve. So close your eyes. Be a visionary. And I always like to end on this last beautiful elephant, because when we talk about an elephant in the living room, we say, this elephant is be what you want to be. And it sprouted butterfly wings, so we know that it's bringing form transformation and health and wellness. So I think it might be time for questions.
Okay, thank you so much, Louise, for a great presentation. That was very informative. And we have had questions come in throughout the presentation, but I would also like to remind you in the audience to continue to use that Q&A widget below the slides on your screen to submit a question at any time. We'll do questions for about 10 minutes. Before we do this question session, I'm gonna give it over to Melanie from Foundations.
Hi all. Here at Foundations Recovery Network, we have a grass movement called Heroes in Recovery. Heroes in Recovery has a simple mission: to eliminate the social stigma that keeps addicted individuals from seeking help, to share stories of recovery for the purpose of encouragement and inspiration, and to create an engaged, sober community that empowers people to get involved, give back, and live healthy, active lives. Join us in this mission at our 6K race series at these locations across the country. As a thank you for your attendance today, please enjoy the discount code WEBINAR2014 to register for any future 6K event. For more information about Foundations Recovery Network events, visit www.foundationevents.com. Thanks, Shannon.
Okay, thank you so much, Melanie. And now we will begin with the question and answer portion. So we had a couple questions come in. Dr. Stanger, about certification, and somebody, was just wondering if you could go into a little bit more detail about the interventionist certification, maybe where they can get more information, maybe about the process.
If I can, I'll look it up for you on a computer right now. But it's Certified Intervention Professional, and it's done through the state of Pennsylvania. So what you need to do, before it was board registered interventionist 1 and 2, and that was done through the state of Illinois. My guess is that if you go on the Association of Intervention Specialists website, you'll be able to do it. But I think if you just Google, and I'm got to put up another computer because I'm on that other one right now to see whether or not I can just Google in Certified Intervention Professional and do it. And there you'll look at the list. You'll find what the criteria is. Also, if you're thinking of becoming an interventionist, many of my colleagues offer across the country intervention trainings. We know that Ken Seeley and John Southworth, Brad Lamb, and Judith Landau all offer, and Jeff and Deborah J. Love First all offer trainings around the country on intervention. They too would be a good resource to find out about that. But again, I'm not doing great at multitasking, but I am trying for you.
Yeah, no, that's great. Okay, thank you. You talked a little bit at the beginning of the presentation about meeting people where they are and, going to their home environment. You said you prefer to do that, but there are some concerns and there's some safety things you have to look out for. Can you maybe just elaborate a little bit on some of those concerns that you should watch out for when going to someone's house?
Well, I think that what you have to do is the way I do the work is I may do 20 or 30 hours of back work, and I may be no different than some of your other colleagues, before I will ever do an intervention. But in particular, you want to do what's called a safety check. So you want to know, are there any guns in the house? Has that person ever been violent? Have there been any kinds of attacks? You don't want to be surprised. I turned down an intervention when, for example, because I just thought that it would be too risky to do in the home, and the caller was adamant to do it in the home when it was, and I have to change things around to protect the innocent, but the person that they wanted to intervene on was a methamphetamine user for over 20 years who had a locked room in the house with multiple handguns. You just don't want to go into that. I don't, and so you would say we could do the intervention, but we cannot do it there. We need a more neutral place. You also want to decide, is that home too volatile to really do the intervention? Is it best to do it in a conference room? And those are things that you'll get from an assessment. So what it really comes from, how do you do an intervention? Like, what kind of initial assessment do you do in addition to learning about family history, learning about generational trauma? Then what I use is a research methodology called portraiture, where everyone's really asked the same question, but I get a picture painted of the family and of the identified client by individuals. And so I don't interview people in groups to start with, because if you do that, you don't get as robust information.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. There were a couple people who sort of wrote in. I know you were mentioning that you weren't going to go multitasking and looking up things, which I completely understand.
I just did. All you have to do is Google. It's www.pacerboard.org. PACER board, BOARD.org, and it will take you to the Pennsylvania Certification Board, and it'll say New Intervention Professional Credential Available.
Okay, great. And then
so it's really easy to find.
Okay, sounds great. And then another one that somebody suggested was the National Association of Drug and Alcohol Interventionists, and that is NADAI.us. I'm not sure if you've had any experience with that one.
No. There's only two, licensing ones for interventionists. Just the board. There's only two. I happen to hold other licenses, and I'm a licensed clinical social worker. I have been since 1973. But in terms of being an interventionist, it's always been the BRI, Board Registered Interventionist, which was through the state of Illinois, which is being phased out, and this Pennsylvania Certification Board, which has just been started this past summer.
Okay, great. Great. And then the last question we'll go over is somebody was just wondering, obviously it becomes even more difficult when somebody has a co-occurring disorder, a mental health issue, and also the substance abuse disorder. Do you ever work with that? And if so, which issue do you sort of work to tackle first?
Well, I always work with both, but I'm also a trained clinician. And so it may be, I think that you need to understand if you're going to work, and you have to deal with both at the same time. Because if someone is dually diagnosed, you need to understand, for example, if they're access to, or, for example, if they're borderline. And you also need to understand how to do a straight mental health intervention, because they are different. For example, oftentimes with a mental health intervention, you just cannot take someone to a treatment center. They need to go through an admissions process. They need to have an assessment. They may even need to get a TB test and a complete physical. So you may be working with that person for quite a long time in order to do that. Also, we did one where the person hadn't left their home for 5 years, and their diagnosis was borderline and a clutterer. So helping that person get the courage to leave that home and working with them it was a very, very different and very long process. And systemically, you have to also, if you're thinking about changing the whole family, you have to put a lot of different things in place. So I would urge anybody who's thinking about being an interventionist, they need to understand what their limitations are, and they need to gain knowledge, because not everybody is the right fit for the right, intervention. And if you don't understand about some mental health issues, you could be sort of sideswiped. So you have to deal with both. And then you have to also be very knowledgeable about treatment centers, because not all treatment centers are alike in terms of their expertise. So you have an obligation, I believe an ethical obligation, to do good patient matching and allow that family that you're working with, after you've got sort of a rocking chair assessment or you've done an assessment of the person themselves, to give them, given their financial resources, given the assessment, given what they need in terms of family and friend coaching, the best treatment centers that would work with them. So there's a lot of variables that come into when you're picking and choosing a treatment center, I believe.
Okay, great. Thank you so much for that answer. And that is all of the time we have for questions today, so thank you so much for answering a couple of those. I do have some final instructions for you regarding CE credit. Please note that the CE certificate process has recently changed, so please pay attention to the following. CE Learning Systems has approved today's program for 1 continuing education credit. To receive your certificate of completion, you must click the green CE certificate widget, complete the evaluation form, and click Submit. For those watching in a group, as a reminder, please download the group submission guide and program evaluation form located in the resources area and follow the instructions provided there. If you have any questions, please click the purple Contact Webinar Help Desk widget at the bottom of the screen. Please join us on Thursday, February 27th at 1 p.m. Eastern Time for another Foundations Recovery Network webinar sponsored by Millennium Laboratories. This one will be titled Substance Use Disorders in Adolescents and the Elderly, Addressing the Differences and Needs of These Two Special Populations. This one will be presented by Dr. Boganovic and Dr. Silverman. A link will appear on your screen in a moment for you to register for that program. You can also register for the event by clicking the purple Register for the Next Foundations webinar widget at the bottom right of the screen. I want to again thank Dr. Louise A. Stanger for an excellent presentation. I would also like to thank Millennium Laboratories for making today's Foundations Recovery Network program possible. Finally, thank you to you and our audience for participating today. We hope you'll join us again in the future for another Addiction Professional webinar. This concludes today's presentation.